pop a seat, let's have a thorough discussion here. This video has been a long time coming, as it's a sentiment I've had ever since Shadow Gens dropped, and people started going on about how it's the best the boost has ever been, or how it's an evolution of the boost formula and should be the future. First of all, the boost should go, in my honest opinion, but that's a topic for another video. In this video, I want to provide a rather unique stance on Shadow Generations as its place as a boost title, because I feel I can add something new to the discussion that I haven't yet seen. If you truly think Shadow Generations is the best the boost has ever been, and should serve as a template going forward, then that's great. This video is not intended to take that away from you or undervalue that opinion in any way. The video title is hyperbolic because that's what works on this site. Say whatever you want, it doesn't really affect me in any way. With that said, let's get started. The boost hasn't been holding up so great since its return in Sonic Forces. The last time we had seen it before that point was in Generations, where it operated similarly to how it did when it first appeared in 3D with Unleashed, with the player navigating through dense, narrow stages at blitzing speeds while having to swiftly react to hazards, stage mechanics, and alternate paths. Because gaining speed takes significantly less effort, the challenge instead comes from having to keep it. It's about gaining a sense of flow and keeping it throughout its stage's entire duration. And in Unleashed anyway, that was the only way to achieve an S rank, likely requiring you to replay the stages and learn their layouts inside and out in order to truly master them. And it would be euphoric once you did. You probably already guessed it by now, but I believe the boost, as far as 3D appearances go, peaked here. Here it demanded the most from the player, and this is some of the fastest Sonic has ever felt. Bundle that with the abundant spectacle and unrivaled music of Sonic Unleashed, and these stages are downright addictive to race through. Colors proceeded to take a different approach with the boost, where in that game, it more so acts as just an additional ability to Sonic's arsenal rather than a key component and central focus of the gameplay, which is a little something that a certain other game does as well. And in my opinion, a game that doesn't center its gameplay around the boost is better off without it. Let me elaborate on that point. Unleashed and Generations are the two 3D boost titles that center the boost gameplay around the boost ability itself. Again, they both focus on quick time action in dense linear stages that ask you to be just as quick on your toes as Sonic in order to perform well. Well, except in Gens, you breathe the right way and you get an S rank there. You are given abilities supplemental to the boost like the Drift, Stomp, Air Boost, Quick Step, Light Speed Dash, and Slide, all tools to help you maintain your state of flow through these stages. And it isn't just the fact that the abilities are there, but that the stages regularly offer opportunity to use and or even require you to use said abilities throughout the stages. It helps the stages feel more dynamic and keeps you on your toes looking out for when those opportunities arrive. And it makes speeding through stages more in-depth than simply boosting to win, as the games were falsely accused of until it became a reality. Forces is this weird anomaly that tried to do what previous games did before it and failed miserably, and as a result, it doesn't really contribute much to this discussion. Common Forces L. Let's get some Common Forces L in the comments. Colors, Frontiers, and Shadow Generations are games that feature the boost as an ability, but don't have their gameplay centered around it. In Colors, the primary gameplay mechanic is the newly introduced Wisps. They will contribute to some of the most bonuses to your score and overall grade upon finishing a stage. They're also the primary means of which you use to explore stages and find alternate routes. On top of that, stages present in Colors are a lot more focused on traditional platforming instead of fast-paced quick reactions and the sort. And because of this simplification, and because Colors originally released on Wii, Sonic's moveset was overall simplified as well. Things like the Drift and Quick Step were assigned to specific segments of specific stages instead of moves always available to you. And I'm sure you can tell, achieving and maintaining flow really isn't at the forefront of Color's gameplay. If you're looking for the thrill that the boost provides in Unleashed and Generations, you absolutely won't be getting that here due to how much of a backseat it takes. Frontiers leans into this even further. Not only is it not a central focus of the core gameplay, but certain aspects of it have even been removed. Throughout most of the entries it's in, the boost has offensive capabilities, allowing you to slam through crowds of enemies without having your speed interrupted in the slightest. Frontiers removes this, which not only leaves the ability looking nude as hell, but also forces you to either avoid enemies altogether or engage them with the absolutely butchered homing attack this game offers. Both options more often than not interrupts the flow. Additionally, the air boost was also significantly nerfed, not carrying you nearly as far as it has in games before. The boost in Frontiers is nothing more but a glorified sprint button, and they're not even trying to hide that. Look! That's a damn stamina wheel. And finally, Shadow Generations. The golden child, huh? While Shadow Generations does lean more towards the traditional boost formula over Colors and Frontiers, it still does not fully encapsulate the original playstyle of the boost, which is fine. It is its own thing, and I respect that in its own rights, but I can't behind the idea that it's the peak of the boost. Because how can it be the peak of the boost formula when it'd actively be better without it? Yeah, this is kind of the point this entire video has been leading up to. The boost doesn't play much of a role in Shadow Gens at all aside from being the designated give me speed button. While yes, you could say that very same thing about original Gens and Unleashed, those games were made with that in mind. Those games understood that because speed was granted with a button's press, that challenging the player to keep that speed up with additional abilities and hazards to avoid was the play. Leaving the level design and present abilities exactly as they are, I personally cannot envision Unleashed or Generations without the boost formula. That's just how integral it is to those experiences. Shadow Generations, not only can I envision it without the boost, it looks better off without it as well. Shadow Generations does not require you to react to alternate routes, mechanics, and hazards nearly as quickly in order to maintain a flow. And while Shadow does have cool new abilities, aside from Doom Spear, Chaos Control, and Doomwing, most of them can only be used in specific, obviously telegraphed segments of certain stages, with there hardly ever being any reason to use the Quick Step as well. As I've said before, it's not enough to have the abilities in addition to the boost. The stages must also do well to prompt the player to regularly use them. I don't even know why I'm taking so much time to explain this point when most of you are just going to leave thinking it's a minor nitpick that I'm looking too deeply into and that there are no differences between the boost here and the boost here anyway. But to make my point even the slightest bit more digestible, I have one more exhibit: the level design. The boost hasn't been holding up so great since its return in Sonic Forces. The last time we had seen it before that point was in Generations, where it operated similarly to how it did when it first appeared in 3D with Unleashed, with the player navigating through dense, narrow stages at blitzing speeds while having to swiftly react to hazards, stage mechanics, and alternate paths. I hope that sounds familiar because it's going to be a point that we're revisiting. Unleashed and Generations made deliberate efforts to keep the boost stages narrow but densely packed, and closing the player in to really sell that sense of speed and hone in on quick action. The boost was made to facilitate linear gameplay. It was made with that in mind as a means of making said linear gameplay as engaging as it possibly could. Shadow Generations, while not the first to do so, deviates from this. Stages more often than not, especially the first acts, are more open in design, with the camera pulled back to aid in that more open feel. Not only does this reduce the sense of speed, but also makes it so that any hazards and alternate paths are well within sight before they come up, making it less demanding on the player to react on the fly. I understand if you prefer this, I understand if you find it to be a significant improvement in fact, but understand that to me, this diminishes the purpose of the boost, a mechanic that again was made with linear level design in mind when making the switch to 3D. You know a formula that was made with a more open approach to level design in mind? The Adventure formula. A formula known to sport more in-depth mechanics than the boost formula, something that in my honest opinion, Shadow Generations would have benefited from. More in-depth mechanics. The boost formula as it is now is the result of constantly stripping down Sonic gameplay to be more simplistic and automated in design. Remember when we had to earn speed? Remember when we had to balance and crouch on rails to build up and maintain momentum? Remember momentum playing a prominent role in the series? Before there were dash pads for every single loop? My ideal Shadow Generations has the role, it has the spin dash, it has momentum, and it has advanced rail grinding. It has you activate all Doom powers manually, so that if you land in a body of water and don't activate the ability in time, too bad, you're punished for it, instead of you just watching and waiting to hit the water. I had this problem with Frontiers and I have it here. If you're going to present me open spaces, then give me open means of traversing them. Stop giving me linear ways to navigate non-linear areas because when you do so, you inherently lessen the potential of those spaces. Shadow Generation suffers from automation. It suffers from simplistic design. It suffers from the boost formula. So how could it be the peak of the boost when the boost actively holds back how much greater the game could have been? This video was a long time coming because I could never really find the right words to convey my issues with the boost in Shadow Generations, and honestly, I'm still not sure I even managed to. I did my best though. Whether you understand, let alone agree with what I'm saying, doesn't really matter to me. It won't change how Shadow Generations turned out. nor how everyone feels about it. What matters to me is that I tried, and I admittedly feel pretty good having it managed to even get some of what I need off my chest. You realize it's a bit harder to share your thoughts with others when you think you're the only one who has a certain belief or opinion on something. And maybe the comments will prove me right. Maybe I am the only one who feels this way about the boosted Shadow Gens. Guess we'll see. That's the vid though. I'll see you in the next one. And yes, I like Shadow Generations. The game is good.